Are you constantly feeling guilty for hurting others? Let's explore how to handle this complex emotion together. Everything you need to know is in today's video. Welcome to Cheap Talk, where we dive deep into life's little complexities. Today we're tackling guilt, that heavy feeling of I messed up. We all experience it, but when does healthy remorse morph into something more? Something almost obsessive.
Right. It's like that lingering feeling of owing someone an apology, even when you've already said you're sorry, or replaying past conversations, agonizing over what you could have done differently.
Exactly. This article we're discussing dives into the psychology of guilt, exploring the fine line between healthy self-reflection and what some psychologists call moral hypochondria.
Moral hypochondria? That sounds intense. Tell me more.
Well, it's basically being excessively preoccupied with past transgressions. The article describes it as a symptom of a more malignant form of narcissism.
Narcissism? Whoa, how does that tie into guilt?
It's fascinating, actually. Apparently, excessive guilt can stem from a need for control. The idea that you are the one who caused the harm, that you have that power, can be a twisted form of self-importance.
So it's less about genuine remorse and more about feeling powerful?
In a way, yeah. The article mentions 5 fantasies often associated with excessive guilt: a sense of agency, a sense of power, a belief in one's impact on others, a feeling of control over the situation, and a sense of superiority masked as excessive responsibility.
Those are pretty heavy. So, how do we tell the difference between healthy guilt and this excessive narcissistic guilt?
Good question. One key differentiator is action. Healthy guilt usually motivates us to make amends. Excessive guilt, however, often keeps us stuck in a cycle of self-flagellation without any real-world action.
Oh, so it's like the difference between feeling bad about hurting someone and actually doing something to fix it versus just wallowing in the feeling.
Precisely. Another distinction is the connection to reality. Healthy guilt is grounded in actual harm caused. Excessive guilt can be completely detached, latching onto unrelated events and inflating the perceived impact of one's actions.
That makes sense. So, someone with excessive guilt might obsess over a minor slip up, while someone with healthy guilt might actually process and move forward from a bigger mistake.
Yeah, and they might even feel secretly disappointed if the person they supposedly harmed moves on and gets better. Almost like they need that person to remain a victim to validate their guilt.
Wow, that's a lot. And if you happen to struggle with letting go of these thoughts of guilt, what to do then? What suggestions does the article bring forth?
Well, the article suggests a few practical exercises, like replaying the event from different perspectives, not just your own, and identifying external factors that contributed to the outcome. It's about recognizing that you don't have absolute control over everything.
So, like accepting the fact that sometimes things happen that aren't entirely your fault, right?
Exactly. And accepting that our ability to influence others is limited. Sometimes the best thing we can do is hope the other person has moved on and that our mistake had minimal impact.
That's a powerful message. If you're finding this conversation as insightful as I am, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Cheap Talk with your friends. We'll be right back after a short break with more on navigating the complexities of guilt.
And it's almost like they need that validation, right? Like if the other person isn't sufficiently wrecked by the mistake, then the guilt-ridden person feels cheated?
Exactly. It's like their narrative falls apart if the other person just shrugs it off. It's like, hey, wait a minute. I'm supposed to be the awful one here. Play your part. I need you to validate my self-imposed villain story. You know? It's weird.
Totally. And this ties into some of the psychological literature on shame and guilt, like the work of Helen Block Lewis from back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah? What did she say?
Well, she delved into the neurotic aspects of shame and guilt and how they can become these self-perpetuating cycles. It's less about genuine remorse and more about maintaining a certain self-image, often one of being flawed or unworthy.
So it's almost like wearing your guilt as a badge of honor?
In a twisted way, yeah. It's a way of defining yourself, even if that definition is negative. It's like Kohut's work on narcissistic personality disorders, from the late 60s. He talked about how even negative attention can feed a narcissistic need for self-importance. So the guilt becomes a way of keeping the focus on you.
So it's not really about the other person at all. It's all about you. It almost gives you a sense of control, doesn't it? To believe that you have the ability to impact people so profoundly, even negatively.
Right. And the article touches on this with that whole sense of agency thing, that fantasy of being responsible for everything, even things that are outside your control.
Yeah. It's like, look at the power I wield. I can make people feel bad. It's a distorted sense of power, obviously, but it's there.
Totally. And this reminds me of another study, this one by Leith and Baumeister. They looked at how guilt prone people are often better at perspective taking.
Oh, that's interesting. So they can actually understand the other person's feelings better, but they still get stuck in this guilt cycle?
Exactly. They understand the impact of their actions, maybe even more so than others, but they get trapped in a cycle of self recrimination. Almost like they get lost in the details and overlook the bigger picture.
And that's where those practical exercises come in, right? The ones about looking at the situation from different angles, understanding external factors.
Yeah. And June Tanguy's research also supports this. She's looked at the adaptive and maladaptive aspects of shame and guilt and how important it is to differentiate between the two. Healthy guilt motivates positive change. Unhealthy guilt keeps you paralyzed.
Absolutely. So if you find yourself constantly replaying past mistakes and struggling to move on, consider giving those exercises a try. And hey, if you're enjoying our deep dive into the psychology of guilt, hit that like button and subscribe to Cheap Talk for more thought provoking conversations. We appreciate your support. We'll have more to unpack in just a moment, so stay tuned.
Okay, so picking up on that last point, this whole idea of needing the other person to be wrecked by our mistake, it's like we need that validation, right? Like if they just shrug it off, the guilt ridden person feels cheated.
Totally. Like their whole narrative falls apart. Hold on, I'm supposed to be the awful one here. I need you to validate my self imposed villain story. It's bizarre.
It really is. And it makes me think about some of the stuff we touched on earlier, like that need for control. If you believe you have the power to inflict that much emotional pain, it gives you a sense of, I don't know, significance, even if it's negative significance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, look at me. I'm so powerful. I can make people miserable. Obviously, it's a distorted view, but still. And the article mentions this too with the whole sense of agency and the fantasy of having total control. It's kind of like playing God, isn't it?
Exactly. Um, it's almost like a dark superpower fantasy or something, and the guilt becomes almost addictive because it feeds into that. It's weird. Hmm.
So weird. And then what about those practical exercises the article mentions, like viewing the situation from different perspectives? How does that help break the cycle?
Well, I think it forces you to step outside of your own head, right? It reminds you that other factors were at play, that you weren't the sole cause of everything. It decentralizes you from the narrative. And I think that's a big part of it.
Right? It stops you from being the main character in this tragedy you've created in your head. It's like zooming out and seeing the bigger picture. And sometimes that bigger picture is a lot less dramatic than we make it out to be.
Exactly. And accepting that other people are, well, other people. They have their own agency, their own coping mechanisms. You don't have control over how they process things. Sometimes the best we can do is hope they've moved on.
And that takes a lot of humility, doesn't it, to admit you don't have that kind of power over someone else's emotions?
Absolutely. It's about letting go of that ego-driven need to be at the center of everything. And speaking of letting go, if our listeners are struggling with this kind of excessive guilt, I think it's crucial to remember that healthy guilt serves a purpose. It helps us learn and grow. It's this unhealthy, obsessive guilt that we need to be wary of.
Totally. And if you're finding this conversation helpful, give us a like and subscribe to Chief Talk for more insightful discussions. We really appreciate your support. And remember, if you're constantly replaying past mistakes, try those exercises. Different perspectives, external factors, they can really make a difference. It's all about finding that balance between taking responsibility and not letting guilt consume you. Thanks for tuning in to Chief Talk.
And until next time, take care, everyone.